Hey friends, as you can see by the plain vanilla backdrop that I have made it back home. We have made it back home. Um, Today was a day of complete, it was travel all day. And it was the longest road trip I've ever done with Annalise. We were in the car for 9.5 hours of road time. We were in the car from 9 a.m., almost exactly 9 a.m. to almost exactly 9 p.m. in terms of our time on the road. That's counting all stops, everything, door to door. And, you know, I have to say, it's interesting to me because taking a 5 year old on a 500 and some mile road trip, you'd think would be a thing. You'd think that that would somehow feel like a task, a lift of some kind. Not even in the slightest. And I think it says something. It's I'm only thinking of this now because we literally got off the road about half an hour ago. I think something about the last week that we spent at the Suzuki Institute. My previous 6 posts have been all about it's called the Intermountain Suzuki String Institute. It's a 1 week Suzuki strings plus a couple of other instruments. There's some trumpet players. There's, I think, even clarinets, maybe? No, I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it's just trumpets as a non-string instrument. But it's a week-long Suzuki camp. And I was just telling my wife, it felt like going to college for a week. It felt like being back on a college schedule. And I and I've spoken in my previous 6 posts. I'm not going to do a full recap here, but I've spoken in my previous posts about what it's like to watch a 5 year old navigate that. We're talking 8 to 9 hours of music per day. That's including some concert viewing. So it's not all like on your feet with your instrument, but it's 6 or so hours of that at least, plus practicing at home. So the level of intensity there is significant, and I watching my daughter just kind of thrive in that, and ultimately just kind of sail through. I mean, the only hiccup was when she couldn't find me after one of the concerts, and she was lost in a sea of hundreds of other kids and got scared because she couldn't find me. That was the only real wrinkle to the entire week. And even after that day, she had that experience and then went to 4 more hours of classes of violin study that day. So she took it in stride. And and so you come to a road trip, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we're just hanging out. Like, I wasn't in a hurry to get home. I wasn't even sure we'd make it today. I was like, maybe we'll just stop somewhere. Maybe we'll get waylaid in Moab and not and decide not to go, not to make it all the way. Fine. But we did make it. She was determined. She was like, we're doing this. I'm sitting in this car until we're home. And I had a feeling she was going to do that. And one of the fun things we did was we listened to a new story. We'd never read it before. It's a story by Dave Eggers called The Eyes and the Impossible. It's the Newbery Award winner for 2024. I think it was published like late 2023. Really fun book. Told entirely from the perspective of a dog, which I thought would be a hit because we just recently acquired a dog. And it's, there is something remarkable to me, and this again. I have this experience in with music with my daughter as well, but I have it with narrative over and over again, where I wonder how much she's getting. I sometimes think it's like the words in some of these books, especially when you're reading the Newbery Award winners. It's like the words, the vocabulary is flying by, and I'm like, well, how are we missing stuff here? And occasionally there will be stuff missed, and I'll stop and sort of explain and make sure we're all caught up. But more often than not, I'll be surprised at how much she understands it, and she'll make deductions or inferences or immediately start asking exactly the right questions. And it's just so much fun to be immersed in narrative with a young mind. There's almost nothing, I mean, aside from music maybe, but watching a world, sitting in a car in a bubble, watching this universe take shape, and then kind of living there together for hours is a really joyful experience. It's a really joyful experience. I enjoy it maybe even more when I'm actively reading the book, but there's actually something really special about, the age of Audible, where I can be driving a car and the story can be read by a famous actor who's doing brilliant interpretations of all the characters. It's not a bad way it's not a bad way to consume narrative nowadays. Um, and it's almost like, I have this feeling and I don't know this. I'm not a cognitive scientist. I'm not a behavioral psychologist. I'm not any of the things that would allow me to truly know or have a deep understanding of what's happening in a child's mind, a child's brain, as a new story unfolds within it. But I'm convinced that it's like new capacities, new perspectives, new a new capacity to apprehend the world is coming online. And that's remarkable. It's remarkable to feel that happening and to sort of be, I feel like it's like a front row seat to the evolution of the universe. That's what it literally feels like. I've actually said this before to various people, but it feels like watching a universe evolve before my eyes. And I think there's something about the time that I am spending with my daughter that's really feels like I'm doing what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to be her companion at this point in her life. And I think there's even, there are ways in which, if I reflect just on the last week, there are moments in which I get impatient or, somehow I'm trying to push things along. And she's pretty good about calling me on it. She's pretty good about pointing it out, and especially pointing it out when it's unnecessary. She's good at that. And sometimes it's, you're still dealing with a 5-year-old who sometimes things just need to happen, and you don't there's no time to explain why they need to happen. They just need to happen. But that really rubs her the wrong way. And there's generally a bit of processing to do after something like that. And usually that's not true. Usually there is time. And usually my own impatience. That's why this drive was such a luxury, and this post music camp time has been such a luxury, because it's basically agenda free. I didn't have a lot to do. I've been letting myself. I had to get us home, but that was a pretty simple task. Nothing momentous there. Didn't even really matter if we made it home today. We could have. There was a beautiful rock formation that we came around a curve, and it was like they were running tours. And for a minute, I was like, we could just stop, do that. But all of it, it feels as though the way in which a young person's mind is guided through certain experiences. I had a version of this when my younger siblings were born, because I was older enough than they were, that by the time they were this age, I was 19, 16 to 17 to 19 years old. And I could tell, when I would see them bump up against certain experiences, I felt like I sort of could go in there and be like, hey, here's how you want to think about this. Like, you can just get past all this bullshit. You don't actually need to get stuck here. Just go, it was like I could see my own struggles happening to them at various points along their growing up process. And because I was still around, I was still nearby. I was around my siblings. I was around living in the same area at the time, so I saw a lot of them. So I felt like I was able to have an influence there. Well, with my own child, it's like that to the ninth power or something, because I literally see her all the time, and that guide that not just the experiences that I try to present or that I try to create, but what to do with those experiences, how to actually receive those experiences. That feels like something that, for whatever reason, I'm passionate about. That is that a thing? Is that a because I can tell, especially with sensitive beings, that it's really important how that gets construed, how events get construed, and how experiences get construed. That matters. That's an important. It's of course it's also about going to a music camp and creating the experiences that are gonna create opportunities for growth. But then there's a lot of like, you can't dictate someone's interpretation of an experience, or or control it, but you can help. You can help create a certain kind of container for an experience. And I am convinced that that boosts evolution, that helps a healthy integration. And it's just a really joyful thing to have the opportunity to do. And now we're home, and the fun continues. So that's where I am today, folks. We made it home in more ways than one. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.